Well, greeting boys and girls, children of all ages, and of course this creepy old guy that's up at like 3:30 in the morning listening to random YouTube pages. It's another edition of something I haven't done in a while on this channel. I've done plenty of movie reviews, even a game or two review in, and of course, trailer reactions. But I haven't talked about like the movie industry in general in a long time. Just picking a subject about cinema and kind of looking at it without, getting into a specific movie. And after seeing a couple reactions from both online and just people talking about a couple of movies that people are calling reboots and remakes, and I question, is it actually a remake of a movie? Or are some of these movies that are being remade, and I have my air quotations up going doing that, are they just merely a new take on an original source material that is not the movie? Because it seems unfair if you're taking if a first interpretation of a piece of literature, shall we say, does radical changes from not even radical changes, but just takes some changes or some major changes to a story and makes it in film, and then you going back and you really like the original story. You weren't so happy with some of the changes they made in the original book or with the original movie. You want to go back to that first book and you want to make that book. Is it then fair to call that new movie you're making a remake of the first one? When it's really not. It's a remake of the book, if anything. But you don't call the first one a remake because it's taken from the same source material. It's like Dracula. Would you call the first Dracula film with Bela Lugosi a remake because it's technically a remake of the book? No, we don't. It's its own thing. There have certainly been remakes of Dracula, i.e., films that have basically decided to completely recreate the tone, styles, scenes that were from Dracula but not from the book, and trying to be Dracula, even down to having Hungarian accent, which mine sounds quite Russian. Yes, a bad Russian accent. Is it fair to compare those two and call that a remake, or should you call them it's a different Spider-Man movie, or it's a different Dracula movie? And I think my little Freudian slip there has revealed one of the films that has been, I guess, at the forefront of this debate right now is The Amazing Spider-Man versus Sam Raimi's Spider-Man. Because after thinking about it for a bit, I think I called it a remake or a reboot. It's certainly not a remake because it's a very different story, even though they have to cover the same plot, but they have to cover the origin story. But in this case, in The Amazing Spider-Man, they took a very different tone. They took different characters, and the film in general has a very different attitude. While Sam Raimi's is extremely campy, the new Amazing Spider-Man's rather dark. Sam Raimi, of course, used different characters, and even the characterization of those characters, like he took, well, I'll get into this, how about? With something like comics, you have a big advantage in that you have something that's normally has a history of like 60 years. 50 to 60 years worth at least, some of them even more. So there are so many interpretations, stylistic changes, different canons within the comic book themselves, that it actually does lend itself to really going back and just taking that core ideal of the character, in this case a teenager that gets abilities, like a spider, shoots webs, and goes out and fights crime, compelled by the death of his uncle. Really, from that, there's been so much in the official line that you can take that in any way you go. And in this case, with the Spider-Man, you can see that they're taking the same material, but in this case, in Spider-Man, they're going for different time perspectives. Sam Raimi's is certainly an interpretation based on the works from the 60s when he was growing up. It was campy, lighthearted. The characters were, now looking back at them, kind of out of place in the modern world. That Aunt May does not seem like someone you'd find in New York. Yeah, there's nice people in New York, but she was just way too... I mean, you might be able to find a person like that in the 60s when the character was written. Amazing Spider-Man, more real, obviously is inspired more by the later stuff, probably stuff from the 80s, which was darker, grittier, and because it's from more recent, that kind of character interpretations are newer and more refreshing. They seem like they fit more. So that works. Is it fair to say it's a remake, though, of Sam Raimi's Spider-Man? Their tones are completely different. The villains they fought were different. Even the circumstances of the origin are very different. So they're certainly not a remake. Reboot? In this case, it's probably clear that it is, or it's more debatable that it is a reboot, because the company wants, or it really is kind of being rebooted because Sony doesn't want to lose its rights to the franchise. And so instead of letting it gestate for a while between franchises, they want to do it now so they maintain those rights. But other films, I think it's harder to make that distinction, like the upcoming Total Recall. Now, is it fair to say this one is a remake of Paul Verhoeven's Total Recall? Not really, because it seems like in this case they went back to the original source material. Now, there's still a big head-splitting confusion as why they're still not on Mars, which was a part of the book as well, or short story, I should say. But a lot of the other aspects seem like they're taking it a new interpretation of the short story. Now, again, being a short story, it is kind of hard. Now, it's not like you're taking Dune, which has too much plot to fit into a movie. Now, with short stories, you normally have a very basic plot outline, and you've got that if you were to make directly, it would be about like a TV episode. You've got to now make a movie out of that. Have fun. So, of course, there's going to be a lot of differences. Plus, there's some updates that you're going to have to add in with, like, this technological progression that we had to make things seem more real, futuristic. Kind of like why they added the armies of robots in this new one. But they seem to be enough that I would say, even though there's, especially after the latest trailer, where they kind of hinted that they're going to have the girl with 3 breasts. Because, I mean, let's face it, that is the most memorable thing about that movie. I don't know why. You had all the crazy Arnold lines, all the crazy action scenes, yet still, the 3 prosthetic breasts are the most memorable thing about that movie. It's the one thing that people always... A Total Recall. Person looks a little confused, like they don't remember the name. Movie with the chick with 3 boobs. Oh yeah, man, that's a great movie. Don't ask me why. Well, okay. I can tell you why, but I don't want to answer. I certainly would say that's not a reboot, and it's not a remake. It is a new interpretation of the source material. And again, you could say, well, it's still remaking it because it's from, again, or it's from the book. Well, you didn't call the first one a remake of the short story. No. Now, one that might be a little bit more tricky, actually I don't think it is this new Dredd movie that's coming out. I think this is another example where they seem to, well, actually, I think I should do a video on the Dredd trailer reaction, but you have Judge Dredd and then Dredd here in 2012. Judge Dredd being the 90s Stallone movie that fans liked. Some people liked because it's campy, but if you were a Judge Dredd fan, you didn't like because they broke certain rules. This is, I think, it's a good case of... I have a feeling that this new one will probably get the character of Dredd more, what he's about, what he, they'll get the Dredd character right, but it seems some of the outlying setting stuff people are not going to like. And I think actually the reason For the setting problems, though, are budgetary. The new Dredd film made for much less comparative money than the first Dredd film. First Dredd film was a major production. This one, not so much. I mean, it's still a major production, but it's not a $100 million movie. But there's clear differences enough, and there are different stories enough, that I would say this new Dredd movie is not a remake or a reboot. It's a different interpretation of source material. Same thing as if they came out with a new Dracula movie. Unless it was quite clear that they were going for a stylistic remake of the first Dracula movie, kind of like what they did with the werewolf. There was enough, I think, from that where the recent movie that I'm not talking about Twilight, ladies and gentlemen. I'm talking about not werewolf, the Wolfmen. Now that one's clearly the new Wolfmen movie is in tone is so much similar to the first one and so much striving to be a remake of the first one. You can say, yeah, that's a remake of the original Wolfman, or Wolfman, shall we say. But if they did a Dracula movie and it looks like they're just doing another redo of the original story by Bram Stoker, then I'd say it's not a remake. And I think this is one of those things that fans should debate about. What's a remake, what's not a remake? And I just went on for 12 minutes about it. And I think it's time for you guys to say, what are some films that people say are remakes but you think are not, that it should not be called remakes or reboots? Give me some examples. If you disagree with my opinions on some of these, lay it on me. Tell me why. And of course, as always, please subscribe. Could always use plenty of room for more subscribers here. Well, that's it for now, ladies and gentlemen. Signing off, and see you next time.